Let's welcome Niamh McBurney, Associate Director, Control Risks. In true Lebanese fashion, and picking up from Laurie, my wife is similarly hopeful because she's off to Beirut this afternoon for her mother's 80th birthday. And while Israeli jets fly and break sound barriers over the city of Beirut, commercial aircraft land gently into Beirut airport and everybody goes off and drinks their pina coladas. Niamh, is this another moment for Lebanon? Is this, as Hassan Nasrallah told the world yesterday, a number of red lines were crossed? Were they? Is this something different, or is this just another day in the life of being a Beiruti?
Well, when it comes to Israeli jets breaking the sound barrier, unfortunately, that is just another day in the life of being Beiruti. But when it comes to the last couple of days, and I want to build on what Laurie was saying, the red lines have absolutely been crossed. I mean, you cannot send any other signal when you not only disrupt the means of communication, intercept the means of communication, but completely destroy the means and tools of communication of your main enemy in the way that Israel has. And send a message other than, we're coming for you. They've been sending that message subtly for the last several months. And what's been very interesting this week, just to pivot slightly to the Israeli angle of this, is the amount of movement that we've seen in domestic Israeli politics, the amount of change, the shifts at the top. On Monday, Netanyahu was trying to fire the defense minister because they fundamentally disagreed on not necessarily whether, but how and when they would choose to officially open a new front and an official Lebanon campaign, between Netanyahu and Gallant, suggesting that he would replace him with a close ally, Gideon Saar, who is generally quite hawkish on Lebanon, like Netanyahu is. And yet then we have Netanyahu also saying in his Monday statement to cabinet, we will find means in which, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here, to return, the northern district, affected refugees within Israel to their homes. And then come Wednesday and then Thursday, we have this. So have red lines been crossed? Absolutely. Is this the beginning of the escalation that a lot of people have been warning about, that we at Control Risks have been warning out for the last couple of months? Yes. Nonetheless, we still think it's gradual in a slightly different way than it has been in the last couple of months. I've kind of got to reinforce that Hezbollah, as Hassan Nasrallah himself said last night, they're not looking to enact an open direct conflict right now. It is fair to say that Hezbollah are still going to try and manage their reaction to this. But are we one step up in the escalation ladder, and is this moving in a particular direction? Absolutely. Can the Biden administration stop it? No, they can't. And they basically admitted that last night by saying ceasefire talks weren't going to happen, between now and January.
We haven't seen, I mean, I thought Nasrallah's speech yesterday was fairly sotto voce, kind of not imminent from their side. And you can see that's consistent over the last year. While they've prodded, they haven't escalated despite this sort of prodding. And we're not seeing on the Israeli side either, like gathering of troops. We don't see a call up of the sort of national reserves, and there's no build. I mean, there's military muscle, obviously, in the air, and it's quite spectacular. But ultimately, in order for this to be a real game changer, you'd have to see signs of a sort of on boots on the ground, the classic sort of cross the river type of thing. Your thoughts on that as being a
Mm.
definitive point?
So when it comes to the preparation, and the day that they choose to launch something, we're still at least several weeks away. Why? Because Netanyahu is at the UN General Assembly next week. You don't launch a war when your leader is out of the country. But also it's going to take them a little bit time to get everything together. When it came to October 7th, it took the IDF 2 weeks before they officially launched the Gaza operation, and even then it was very much phased. And the first phase was, included a very limited number of whether ground troops or kind of operational troops. So it's probably going to be similarly phased in the way that Gaza was. There is also a political element to this, which Netanyahu will, to some degree, once they launch this or just before, arguably have to announce the Gaza conflict as over and that they've won. Now, what that actually looks like is anyone's guess. We don't think that they're actually going to fully withdraw from Gaza very quickly at all. But for domestic, kind of popular reasons, he's going to have to show that he's managing these conflicts a bit more carefully than he actually has, because they've largely been outside of his control, and also to help protect himself. So when it comes to Lebanon escalatory cycle, we think it's going to be gradual, it's going to be phased. I mean, the fact that there was an extensive air campaign by the Israeli Air Force last night, you could argue that that's potentially the first salvo of this. And there'll probably be something like, an airstrike campaign going on over the next couple of weeks while they build up resources, get everyone called back up again, get all their ducks in a row, figuratively, and before they probably launch some sort of ground incursion, I will say. We've got to be careful about the terminology here, but
Yeah.
what we've also got to remind ourselves is, Israel has done this before in 82 and 2006. It fundamentally failed both times. So it's not going to want to repeat either of those playbooks either.
We've talked about this before, which seemed to me to go a little bit under the radar screen in the last few days, literally, figuratively speaking, and that is the burning oil tanker that was attacked by the Yemeni Houthis that was sitting in the Red Sea has been towed away to safe area by an EU naval mission. And I'm wondering how to interpret that. Your thoughts? Obviously, the Houthis are the ones who attacked this ship, which carrying 1 million barrels of oil. Now they would have obviously had to cooperate in salvaging it. Your thoughts or insights on that? What does it mean for ongoing trouble in the Red Sea?
Sure. So we know that there was a private sector commercial effort to try and tow the vessel, which was abandoned after the mission was effectively continually attacked by the Houthis, and the companies pulled out. I mean, and that would have been a combination of looking to protect their people, but also their insurance companies probably would have gotten a little bit nervous at that stage. So I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised when the EU Force stepped in. I mean, it was great to see it. It was absolutely necessary, and clearly at that stage, because the private sector had already tried, it was important for government to come in, and it did. There would have been, yes, a modicum of cooperation in order to facilitate this, but that's actually not unusual when you consider, for example, the massive UN presence in Yemen, and the engagement that the UN had across a number of different UN organizations and at the highest level in order to deal with the UN, the FSOSF last summer. So I mean, there are existing channels. I'm not aware of explicit ones. However, it is my suspicion that the EU was facilitated by the UN in this in communications. The EU doesn't have an official presence in the country. And almost every single, apart from the Dutch, I think that's it. EU country no longer has an active embassy in Sana'a, and very very few diplomats at all operating in Aden. So I suspect the EU would have used UN communications channels because they're already very very well established. And although it was a very difficult process to get the FSO surfer solved, it was nonetheless the first phase was successful. So it would have seen that, if the UN could do this last summer, then we can hopefully do the same. And they have, and it's safely on its way. But it is a very interesting kind of insight into the difficulty that the Red Sea Challenge is still going to pose, and frankly that the international community just isn't thoroughly dealing with. And it's because they're all distracted and really they don't know what to do about it.
Niamh, in order for this, again, to the survey question, for it to be defined, I think, in a sense of a regional war, that this conflagration that has been a concern for many months would be that Iran gets involved in a direct way, not a proxy way, not in bits and bobs. But your thoughts with the new Iranian president, Iran's posture has been very controlled over the last year. Do you see that changing? Would they get sucked in? Could they be, or your reading on the outlook from an Iranian point of view?
So we don't think there will be a regional war. And by regional war, we mean, half a dozen countries all
Yeah.
fighting at the same time, either against Israel or even between themselves. Iran's posture has been very restrained. It will continue to be restrained. As Larry said at the beginning, we still haven't seen a response from Iran of the assassination of Haniya. We will at some stage, there's absolutely no doubt about it. But what both Iran and Hezbollah have managed to do is to separate themselves to a degree and how they choose to react to events. This is really important. It actually emphasizes Hezbollah's independence of action. But fundamentally, what the last year has done, and I'll end on this, is that the resistance movement is in an identity crisis. It has faced the greatest opportunity to counter Israel that it has had in 50 years. And what has it done? It's backed down.